Uh, uh, where is my menu? Oh, okay, please don't do this to me. Come on. Yeah, there's no menu here. Yeah, fine. I won't talk about it. I would take some points off my imaginary score, which I don't have. But, menu is a personal pet peeve. I won't talk about it anymore for sure this time. But just be aware, you can't change anything here. So, Reverie. Reverie is a one-screen point-and-click puzzle game. It heavily emphasizes style over gameplay, has nice chibi art, and the environment looks pretty good. Everything looks clean, but the animation is a little bit janky. The puzzles themselves aren't difficult, but you can get stuck here and there. The game is pretty short, so what I'm going to do is move from stage to stage and tell you what I like, what I dislike, and random stuff. Stages don't have any names as far as I know, so I'm going to call the stages by their numbers. Stage 1 puts you on an island. Somehow your camera is always zoomed in to your character, so you can zoom out by pressing Z, and you should do that because seeing the stage as a whole is better for solving the puzzles. Once you zoom out, you should look for a pedestal with crystals on the bottom. Those crystals will give you hints for the following puzzles. On stage 1 we have, for example, a fiery afternoon as a hint. How do you get there? Well, you click everything and figure out what it does. In this case, you have to click on the 3 on the left side of the screen and then click on the flowers. I have no idea why this triggers the fiery afternoon, because the next objective is verdant rain, and it actually makes a little bit more sense. First you have to make it rain with the bamboo water fountain, and then you activate the sapling that will grow a green flower. Clicking the green flower will make the rain green. Makes more sense, right? The rest you can figure out for yourself. Stage 2 sets you in a cave. The stage plays a little bit more with sound. You might get stuck here because every time I play this stage, I have no clue what I'm doing actually. Just look out for colors and you should be Gucci. Stage 3 might be my favorite stage. It gives you a few things to work with, and the puzzles are actually easier than the rest of the game. There's a nice background movement, and you might get something out of it. It's better than the other stages. Stage 4 hurts my eyes a little, since the last puzzle requires you to bathe the lands in silver lights, and it's very bright. This stage is meh, it's fine. Stage 5 is basically the last stage. Until now, the slowness of the game wasn't that apparent, but in this stage it is. It is very slow and the puzzle mechanic is thrown a little bit out of the window. Yeah, I really don't like this stage, even though this is probably the stage that looks the best, I would say. Anyways, after solving every puzzle, your character dies and a new character appears called the Dreamwalker. Yes, your character dies, I don't know why, don't ask me. Leave the stage and the game is over. So, I assume you were the Dreamwalker all along, and the floating islands you see in the background of the last stage are the dream worlds. So what you did is basically move from dream to dream, either helping or destroying them, I guess. They could have done something with this Dreamwalker mechanic by giving the player 2 portals, for example. One for destroying the dream, one for saving the dream. In the last stage, you could have 2 different endings, a good one, a bad one, and maybe even a neutral one. These are just ideas that they could have worked with. Right now, it's a very simple game. There isn't much to do, but there's a lot to see. And I think the music is not well incorporated. It could have worked with that too. And, normally I don't like puzzle games at all. I enjoyed them a little bit. I enjoyed puzzles in games, but generally speaking, I don't like puzzle games. I'm more of the shooty, arcade shooty, action third person stuff, amalgamation, whatever. But this game I could go through without having a breakdown. There's another game called Way Out. It's also a puzzle game. I still didn't finish it. It's too much for me. It's for people that like have time and are very calm. And after half an hour trying to finish one puzzle, I just gave up. Okay, I couldn't finish the game. But this game I could. It was fun. I didn't have to look up guides on the internet. So it's definitely something I will recommend to everyone. And it's a few bucks, okay? And yeah, I think we're done here. Chris Morrison, the developer or creator of Reverie, has agreed to an interview, and here's the interview. Please listen to that. Please introduce yourself, tell the people what you do, who you are, and maybe a little bit of what Reverie is.
Sure. So my name is Chris. I run a very small studio called Chronicle Games. We're 3 people, or actually more like 2.5. We've been around for maybe like 5 years, making small games and doing some contract work, which is kind of invisible. But Reverie is a little game that we put out with the artist, mainly. The artist's name is Julian. So Julian had the idea that he wanted to kind of have something like a almost ambient game. His idea was that he wanted to introduce the player to the art and have them spend really most of their time just looking at the art and enjoying it and feeling kind of like ambiance, I guess, from the art style. So our first game that we looked at like that is this game called Mountain that you might have seen before.
Yeah.
Where you literally just have this mountain floating in midair and you just, touch it and it makes little noises, but really nothing happens. And somehow we got from there to where we ended up making a game that's kind of like a puzzle game, except none of the puzzles are very hard. So you just kind of have a little character and you go through different stages, and in each stage you can do something like, light a campfire or click a tree and the leaves on the tree will grow. And as you do those things, the environment changes different ways, like maybe when you make the leaves grow on the tree and do something else at the same time, it's going to cause it to rain. So yeah, that's the basics of Reverie, is that it's, a game that we started out as something that would be almost completely ambient, like a screensaver, and then we ended up just messing around with it and deciding that it would be cool to have game mechanics like a puzzle, which for some people who have played it, that kind of confuses them.
Now that you mentioned... Yeah, no, please continue.
Well, you can tell a little bit from, reviews and people talking about the game and that sort of thing that, people who play puzzle games expect really intense puzzles. So, if they come looking for a puzzle game and they find like this little art game, it might be disappointing to them that the puzzles are not like racking their brain.
That's funny, because I'm the guy that is... I don't like puzzle games that much. I like puzzle in games, but puzzle games themselves, I don't like that. So Reverie is kind of the sweet spot. Of course, there's a few things here and there that I think, that's kind of stupid, but it was pleasant. So, and after I heard it was an art-led, very much art-led game, I thought, okay, that makes more sense. But so you mentioned the puzzle elements, and that people expect more of the puzzly, more puzzles in the game, or hardcore puzzles in the game. So what was the reception from the puzzle community, basically?
Well, we didn't hear from a lot of people from that community, but I think that, the few who played, they're either okay with changing their expectations of the game, or they're still expecting, what they wanted to see in the first place, which is some puzzle game that really racks their brains. But, I don't think that we could have even built a puzzle game with really intense puzzles. I don't think any of us think that way at the studio. None of us are really puzzle game players in particular, and personally, I feel every time I play a puzzle game, I feel stupid. So,
yeah.
So, for me, it was also nice to experiment with this game. And like you said, some parts of it, even as the developer, we can play it, and some parts will be like, well, it's not so good.
Yeah.
But I think overall it was successful at what we were trying to do.
One thing that bothered me the most was a little bit of the speed. The animation is I would say minimal, and which is not a bad thing, especially on later levels. It got on my nerves because I don't know, somehow it felt so slow, like you're threading to deep waters or through mud. Was this the intention because you mentioned before people should look at it? Was it the intention, or was like just a byproduct of the whole game?
Yeah, it was. I would say it was the intention, but we didn't necessarily know that we're doing the right or wrong thing by setting the speed that way. Like I said earlier, the intention of the game overall was to have this kind of ambient, dreamlike experience. And I guess that when you have a goal in mind like that, you start applying it to different things. Like, if the character is zipping around, it looks really strange. So we kind of slowed it down more and more. As I recall, it's been a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm sympathetic to what you're saying. Like, I could play the game and I'd be like, oh, if you're not in the right frame of mind, it's like, oh, please just hurry up. Just do whatever you're going to do instantly. So I don't know. I think an interesting question for somebody else, or maybe for us to answer later with a similar sort of game, is it okay without a character at all, where you just click different things on the screen?
Yeah,
and they instantaneously happen.
I mean, I think it was okay, because if it didn't have the character, it would remind me of a hidden object game, and I don't really like them. But it could speak to another demographic. But that would be that would be a decision you had to make. But one thing, yes, please.
Sorry, it's an interesting idea to address that demographic, though, because usually they don't get much service from the hardcore game developers.
Yes, that's true. One thing that I was thinking about when I played the game and went back to it and looked at the price, it's a very, very cheap game for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours I had with the game, because I played it through several times. And since I play a lot of indie games, I see that price point a lot. So what do people expect for this price tag, and how well did you sell your games?
I would say for this game, we didn't worry so much about what people would expect from the price tag. For me, I decided on the price for the game, and my thought was just, this is a small game. It didn't take us forever to make, and we were actually making it alongside some other projects that we had at the time. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't even a full-time project to do it. It took a decent amount of effort, but overall, I just wanted people to play the game. So when you look at it that way, and even now I'm thinking about just making the game free, because it's been long enough, and actually we made the money back that we spent on developing it. So on Steam the sales will trail off over time, and we don't get that many sales anymore. That's so true. I kind of think just make it free, just so people can play it and experience it. So the price was just not important. I just set it low enough, or basically I set it as low as it could go. Okay. Just to try to get more sales than people moving on because they thought that anything would be too much.
Okay, since we're talking about a little bit of price, I want to steer in that direction and talk about a little bit of marketing. I think I heard from Reverie, from the Total Biscuit podcast, if you remember this guy called Total Biscuit, or John Bain. Did that influence sales for the game, and did you guys market Reverie anyway?
Honestly, this is really embarrassing for me to admit, but I had no idea until you told me that he'd mentioned the game.
It wasn't actually. It wasn't him. Actually, it was the podcast member called the Dodger. and she plays a lot of indie games like that. And she said, "Oh, this game looks really good," and I think she played even on stream. So I imagine, okay, is there a correlation between sales and the appearance of this game on Dodger's stream? That's why I asked.
Yeah, you'd have to tell me the exact date, but I would say probably not.
Okay.
Probably not from that particular mention. I think the most units that we moved was just from a game bundle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, but I think that would be potentially very good. But if somebody mentions the game and the studio has no idea they mentioned it, then it's kind of hard to capitalize on any opportunity that might have appeared with that. Like if I knew at a particular time that somebody was going to mention my game on a really popular podcast, then I'd probably put it on sale right then.
Yeah, of course. I want to steer a little bit away from that and talk about the Chronicle games in general. I think your next project is called, or the project your guys are working on are called Miscreation. I played a little bit on the demo, I think. And if you can talk about a little bit of Miscreation and the whole Chronicle game situation with a lot of mobile games that I had looked at but never knew that you guys designed it, because I think I played one or two of them. So please just talk about your company basically and the new game you're bringing.
Sure. Well, Miscreation was, I mean, this is a pretty common story among indie game developers. Miscreation was supposed to be kind of our last game because overall the studio was not profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, I went from being full-time with Chronicle to where currently I'm not full-time. The other two guys are full-time. And I just kind of lead things and provide some funding for the studio to go on. So it's kind of like a very expensive hobby, which I think is pretty typical for indie developers. And Miscreation was, basically me saying, "Oh, I just want to do one more thing." And the thing I decided that I wanted to do was kind of an homage to a game that I played when I was a kid on Nintendo called EVO: The Search for Eden, I believe is the full name.
Mm-hmm.
So in that game, you have something similar to what we have in Miscreation now, which is basically it's a pretty basic platformer. The original EVO is also extremely basic platform, but you have this idea that you can evolve your creature with different parts. So for us, we made it that it's parts that you pick up around the game, and you can evolve like a new horn or a new set of legs or new wings.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really the core idea of the game. That said, translating, a 30-year-old Nintendo game to be a modern game is not a direct process, right? The Nintendo game had all kinds of weird little stuff about it that was basically forced on the game designers, I believe, because the Nintendo system was so limited. Like the stages were so small, you could pretty much just measure it with your hands on the screen.
Okay.
And you would go in those stages and you would just grind for a really long time to build up points. And actually, if you play that as a modern player, it's like, oh my God, this is so annoying.
Yeah.
Even though I have fond memories of playing it as a kid. So we tried to solve some of those, and that was kind of the remaining challenge. Challenge one was just to kind of recreate the evolution system in some way, and challenge two was to, try to make it work as a modern game. And that actually produced some challenges that, we probably have not handled perfectly. The game design is not perfect, but I think it's that's the interesting part of building games, is that you start off doing something and you're like, yeah, this is so obvious and so easy to do. And then you start doing it and the little questions of the game design start to pop up all over the place.
Yeah.
You go, oh, how do you do this? What's the right way to do this? I've got like 5 different options to handle exactly how the creature evolves. Which one do I pick?
Yeah.
and it takes time to test each one. So, I think the one thing we did in the game that was the most interesting and cool was just to get the creatures working, where we have there's something like 40 or 80,000 different potential combinations that you can have in the creature.
Oh, okay.
And they all work. They work beautifully.
Yeah, they look weird. I like that. I'm like, oh, this looks weird. I like this. This is good.
they're supposed to look weird. They're supposed to look freakish and funny.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of nailed that system of getting the art to work together well and look good.
When I played it, I got like a worm with 2 arms and a tail or something like that. It looked really weird, and then it turned into a chocobo or something like that. So
I think you must have been playing the slightly older version of the game. We actually replaced the evolution system you were playing with so that players could choose their own parts.
Okay.
As choose what they're going to evolve into next.
Yeah, because I didn't understand the mechanics, so I just put something together and then it turned into a chocobo. I'm like, oh, this is good.
It was pretty weird. Yeah. It was pretty weird that you would evolve and then you get something totally different on your next evolve, just based on the pool of parts that's available to you. So that was kind of try number 1 on the evolution system, and we finally decided that it's just not the greatest, and we replaced that system since you played it.
And Miscreation is coming out on Itchy or Steam, or I didn't see that. I didn't quite see that.
It'll be on Steam,
okay.
Just like any game, and we'll release it on the other portals like Itch as well.
And then Chronicles will be Chronicle games will then be done for you, or it will leave.
Well, that's kind of the catch. In the meantime, while we've been working on Miscreation, we got kind of a small flood of contract work,
okay.
And now the contract work is not only funding the studio, it's actually making a profit. So, we kind of accidentally went from money-losing studio to a money-making studio. So now we have this question of, oh man, what do we do with ourselves now?
That's interesting because a few weeks ago, I had an interview with the developer of how was the game called? Ascend, Hand of God. It was shut down ultimately, but he said you got to do what you got to do, and to keep the lights on, we had to take contract work basically. So this seems to be a common thing.
And the advice that I got from pretty much every other game developer that I met doing contract work was, don't do it if you can avoid it. That was my experience as well. When I had a career, and I worked at larger companies before I went off on my own. The contract work was really painful. Sometimes the clients would be really demanding, or just sometimes they didn't know what they wanted. So I got a lot of this advice that's like, don't do it. It's just too painful. It'll make your life, miserable. And really, if you're making games and you're miserable, something is wrong. And then we've been working with this company that's called Legends of Learning, which actually has a whole bunch of different studios working with it. So if there's any other game developers listening, you might want to look these guys up. And they have a system where you basically make little educational games, and based on how well those educational games do on their platform, you get paid kind of in proportion to that. And the pay doesn't suck. So, I guess we finally just sort of lucked out and found this thing that is able to pay the bills and also is actually pretty enjoyable to work on, which is unusual, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if it's fun, right? But since we're already on the topic of advice and things to do, I would pose one of my last questions here. Since you have your own indie studio, do you have any advice for devs that are starting out right now?
Oh, sure. I mean, I have advice. If I could go back in time 5 years and talk to myself, I have a lot of advice for me.
Please share. Please share with us.
I think the advice that I got early on from a pretty experienced game developer I worked with was if something's not working with a game, if it's difficult to work on, if it's not fun, if anything is wrong early in the production of a game, just kill it. Just instantly, with no reservation, just kill the game. And so the first game that I worked on at Chronicle, I actually had that guy prototyping the game, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's something fun here, but at the same time, it seems like it's going to be really hard to complete the design and make the game, like a winner in the market." And I said, "Yeah, but I love the idea. I just want to try to make it happen." It took us 2 years to build that game, and it was a big money loser, right? I mean, it's a really cute game. It looks nice. We got mentioned in a couple of big publications. All the stuff that looks cool from the outside, but it lost a lot of money. So, I had to look back and be like, man, that guy just gave me, the advice he gave me was just the right advice. And you kind of run into that sort of stuff all the time when you're doing anything creative. If something is really, really a good idea, it's almost easy to work on.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if something is painful and it's really a slog, you're fighting all kinds of issues. Even if it seems like it's the best idea in the world, maybe it's not that good.
It's funny that you're mentioning that because I'm working on something right now. But please continue.
Well, it applies, I think, actually to any creative field. I have a background in some other stuff, and I can tell you it fully applies there too, right? If something is just fighting you, it's the way I would describe it. If your creative project is fighting against you constantly every step of the way, there's probably some hidden issue there that you're not seeing, maybe that you'll never see, or you won't see until you've worked on it for 2 years and spent a large part of your life.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I've talked to people who, have had successful hit games, and those same people always have failures. Of course, we all fail at some point, and they say, "Yeah, my hit game, such and such, was so easy to work on. It was so easy to make it come together and be a complete game." I think there's really something there that's. It's very simple advice, but it's just so hard to follow when you really love something.
It's basically the sunken cost fallacy, right? If you spend a lot of time in one thing, you don't want to stop working on it because just a little bit will finish it. But yeah, I think it's like the sunken cost fallacy, but it's not quite the same. It's adjacent to it. You can actually tell a lot of times with projects very early on, before you've done a lot of work, that it's just, there's going to be something difficult about it. We even had that with creation to some degree. And, we pushed on, and now the game's mostly complete mechanically. But who knows? Maybe if we dropped it and kept messing around with other prototypes, maybe we would have found something that's actually that hit game that's going to have tons of followers. Yeah, of course. Good. If you don't have anything more to share, I would thank you for the interview. And this is now your time. You can plug everything and say anything except for something that is illegal. I don't want that. But thank you for the interview, and please, the stage is yours.
Well, I don't have much more to add except I hope that people will check out Miscreation. It's a game with a very cool concept inside of it, and hopefully we're going to release it this summer, June or July. We just kind of have to find the time to get it done beside the contract work, which is always a challenge. Yeah. Okay. But once it's done, I think it's going to be a pretty cool game.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Carl.
As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And take care of yourselves. Have a nice day. And we will see each other next time.